Mali is locked in its worst civil unrest in decades. Protesters are calling for the resignation of the President Ibrahim Keita. In retaliation, his forces are firing at will. After the lethal crackdown, the protests have only become more intense. Under President Keita, Mali has become a failed state. He has struggled to contain the Islamic militancy, and the country has now turned into a humanitarian disaster. Will the president be forced to step down? Here's a report.
In Mali, a mosque is at the heart of the country's worst civil unrest in years. Over the weekend, security forces made several assaults. First, they fired gunshots in the air and then unleashed tear gas. Their objective was to kill Imam Mahmoud Dicko, the leading figure of the opposition movement. The mosque was surrounded by spent bullet casings, rubble, and the remains of torched tires. 6 people were shot dead at the site, while Imam Mahmoud Dicko escaped. Hundreds of opposition leaders have been detained. The capital, Bamako, is a scene of war. And President Ibrahim Keita's forces are firing at will. The security forces have killed at least 11 protesters. The demonstrations first broke out on June 5th. People called for President Keita's resignation. They were angered by the long-running jihadist movement, economic woes, and government corruption. Then, the parliamentary election turned peaceful protests into a public outrage. A court overturned the results for about 30 seats. This move helped several members of Keita's party get elected when in fact they had lost the election. The protests that followed put Keita under immense pressure. Protesters pelted the National Assembly with rocks and shattered its glass facade. Then they ransacked and set fire to parts of the building. Keita sent the security forces to restore peace, but the killings led to a surge in clashes. Now, to calm the protesters, Keita has dissolved the controversial court that ruled in his favor. But the protest hasn't stopped. The movement has grown into something bigger. Religious, political, and civil society leaders have come together calling for wider reforms. Starting with Keita's resignation. The 75-year-old president has been in power since 2013. He has struggled to contain an Islamist insurgency that first emerged in the north in 2012. It quickly spread across the country and to neighboring Burkina Faso and Niger. It is Keita's biggest failure as president. Despite having the support of more than 13,000 international peacekeeping forces in Mali, this year alone, more than 600 civilians have been killed. The militants have forced farmers off their land. The lack of food and fear of militant attacks has forced at least 250,000 people to flee their homes. Over 5 million people will need aid to survive in the coming months. The political crisis is worsening the severe humanitarian crisis. International and regional blocs have condemned Keita's methods. Political turmoil in Mali could undermine the global campaign against Islamist insurgents in West Africa's Sahel region. So it is not just the people who have lost faith in Keita. Now, calls for his resignation will only ring louder. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.